remote back onto your local machine, like all the deltas. So then you can, well, if you wanted to check out master and make it up to date with the origin, you still have to do a pull because it inherently like it's gonna just say like, oh, this is my last commit head on my local master. I don't want that up to date with origin. I do a git. So for me, like anytime I start a new branch, the first thing I do is git fetch origin, git checkout master, and git pull origin master, and then I do my git checkout new branch from master.
Well, I just merged next steps into master.
Right. But your master on your local machine doesn't have that merge.
Yeah, okay.
That makes sense. So if you want your local master to match that, you'd have to check it out in pull.
Okay. So I should do that.
Yeah, if you want. Or you can create this new branch off of origin master.
Oh, like git checkout. How do you do that?
Dash B. So branch name.
What are we doing next?
So we're going to build out our first module. What do you want your first module?
Graphql module?
Well, no, it'll be like, what's our first?
Module?
No, it's a feature.
Oh.
Like users or what data do you want to expose first? Sure, cool. So then name it like
module?
users module, yeah.
And then
space origin / master.
Ooh, so you're checking out the branch user module from origin master.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's exciting too. Okay.
Yeah, when I was at my first job, like we didn't use GitHub at all. We didn't really use VCS.
Yeah.
Then when I went to FAM 360, I was around a bunch of engineers and we all used Git, right?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like a thrown into the fire because I really hadn't done a material amount of Git,
yeah.
except for myself locally, which I didn't have any conflicts because it was just me merging into me.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry about it. And then, like, anytime I need help, I would talk to my friends and I'd be like, hey, I have this problem. And they would be like, oh, bring up Git Kraken, or bring up the IntelliJ Git CLI, or bring up source tree or whatever. And so I ended up having like 5 different Git GUIs. I'm like, this is annoying. So I went home and like spent a long weekend like learning to Git from the CLI. So now I don't have a Git GUI.
Yeah.
I'm not against them. I just use the CLI.
Yeah.
Because that's universal.
I like that better. I started off with the GitHub GUI or whatever it was, and then I was like, no, I know, like, it's not like you're a real developer if you use terminal or whatever, especially like with the Vue GUIs and stuff like that these days.
Right. No, absolutely.
But I do like.
It's just one of those things where it's just like I taught myself it because I wanted to learn that because that was universal.
Yeah.
And I just keep with it. I Git Kraken's great.
Yeah.
I don't like source tree because I don't like Atlassian.
Yeah.
I stay away from anything Atlassian. I don't like Confluence. I don't like Jira.
Come on, you love it. You love documenting things in Confluence.
It's why create your own proprietary language? Why not use Markdown? Why?
That's terrifying, by the way. I've never actually used Confluence, but now that you've said that, it doesn't make me want to use Confluence. No. But there's got to be like websites out there. It's like Confluence to Markdown or Markdown to
There
Confluence.
is. Well, there's actually at SVG, one of the DevOps guys and I were talking about it, and we built out this program. He mostly built out the CLI that would like on push to master into each of our repos would take the README and convert it to the Confluence and upload it to a Confluence space.
Oh my god. Okay, so what do we do now?
All right, so now we're going to go back into our code.
Okie dokes.
Let's go ahead and stop our server because we're going to want to make sure that our stat. We could do a git status. Just make sure that it runs an update. Yeah. Okay. All right. Close that down. Actually, don't leave that open. So we're going to create a new module called user. So just like what we did.
Yeah. So hold on. Nest G module user. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. So that created it and it added to our app module, which is just fine. Yes. So now that is an important note too. Like, so app module is our bootstrap module, right? So if you want something to be exposed, you have to import it into app module, and we do. So you almost always import your modules. Okay. So we can close that out. We can close out all of our other open things, and we're going to create a folder.
There's got to be a faster way.
There is. We go open to
Dedex.
I'm sure there's a command. There's a command too. I just don't remember it.
Okay. So where am I going?
So under the user directory, we're going to create another directory called Schema.
Okay.
Or schemas.
New folder.
Yep, folder.
Schemas.
So this is the this is what the Nest.js docs recommend, is like the separation where you have schemas which represent a Mongoose schema or like an entity for
And does
type
this
ORM.
have anything to do with GraphQL?
Not yet.
Okay.
Soon. Very, very soon. It will.
Okay, so schemas.
So inside of there, we're going to create a user.schema.ts.
User.schema.ts. So it's not. Why does it not have anything to do with GraphQL?
So what this is agnostic of how we want to expose this data. This is representative of a user collection in our database.
Okay.
So this is the class that is going to represent.
But like in databases, you create schemas all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in like this, regardless if we were using REST or if this was a microservice and we were going to pass it over gRPC, or if we're going to use GraphQL, we'd still have to do this, which is where we create a schema that represents a collection in our database.
Okay.
Which is different than our GraphQL schema.
Okay. That's why I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we need to import schema from Mongoose, and specifically not Nest.js, Mongoose.
Mongoose.
Yep.
Wait, so what do you mean specifically not Nest.js?
Well, so there's a Nest.js Mongoose.
Oh,
and
got
then
it.
this
Okay.
is just Mongoose.
So
and this
import
is schema, capital S. Boy, I wish it would give you IntelliSense. I don't know what you did to make it so angry, but all right. So now we're gonna create a new constant that we're gonna export. So export constant. And so we're gonna name it user schema.
all lowercase, capital.
I actually title case it like capital U, but that's just a personal thing. Doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And it's gonna equal a new schema.
Equal.
Yep.
New schema.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that.
Okay, yep. Like the one
Okay.
that we imported. All right, and that's a class, so it needs a constructor,
Oops.
which it gave you.
Oh.
Thanks, prettier. But we're gonna pass in a JSON object to it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So now hit enter. This represents our.
Oh look, I saved it and it closed it.
No, it's because they don't have anything in it. So this represents our user schema. Now, there's a couple things that come out of the gate with it, like primarily an ID. So because it's a schema, it has an underscore ID, which
Like that?
yeah, you don't have to do it. Like it's already there.
Okay.
And I use it, and it has its own it's a string,
Okay.
but it's like a object ID is what it's called.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what I use. I don't find any unless you wanted to use integers or something or UUIDs. I don't see any reason to not use it, so I just use it. So what do we want? What do we need that represents a user? Email?
Yes. Well, name. First name.
Sure. First name.
So do I have to be like first name like that?
Yep. So now
And then
this takes it either takes a type or an object. So let's just do an object.
Okay.
And so we're going to say type. What's our type? String.
Like that.
And then, yep, like that. And so now is it required?
Is it in the object?
Yeah. So if we want to make it required, we use required true. Default is false, by the way.
Okay.
And then we say, there's a bunch of other stuff we can pass in. We can pass in like trim, which means on save, it will trim off any spaces at the beginning and end.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so we can add that in there.
Just trim?
Yep.
True?
Yep.
It's starting to get easier. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so now, if we just want name, that's great, but, whoa,
You don't like it?
what did that do?
It
It just fit it onto the screen. Okay. Sorry. All right, let's add a last name. You need a comma. There you go.
Last name.
And it'll be pretty much the same.
Okay.
Let's avoid passwords right now because
Okay.
we could talk about authentication
Email.
and another thing. Yeah. And we want this to be unique, right? So we're going to basically do the same thing. So you can copy what you have and just add.
Oops. What was that?
And then just add another property inside that JSON object that is unique, true.
And is this all Mongoose?
Yeah, this is all Mongoose. This is all coming from
This is
Schema.
all Mongoose, but not Mongo.
Well, yes and no. Mongoose is just a library that interacts with Mongo. But
You're killing me.
well,
It's like Node and Nest.
yeah, exactly. Like because I think Typo or M now actually supports Mongoose as well. But think like if this were Java world, we have like Hibernate, and there's also Jude, and then they have their own like Spring has a MongoDB library. I think it's called like Spring Data Mongoose or Mongo, something like that.
Okay. Well. Okay. So this is all from Mongoose.
Yeah, this
is
is all
like not Mongoose stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is
Anything
creating
else?
a schema in Mongoose.
Yep. So what this defines is this schema. When we create a new user, we use this user schema,
Okay.
and it grants us a lot of stuff, right? Like there's methods that come from it being a schema, like save, find by ID, find one, find distinct, find all, find, and then you pass it a query. All those come from the schema. So.
Okay. So we're basically using email as ID.
Yeah. Well, no, we're using email as like a unique finder, but there is an ID already.
Oh, it just comes with it.
Yeah, it comes with it. Yeah, there's a primary key ID as it is.
Okay.
But email is inherently unique.
Yeah.
So, do we want anything else, or is this good?
This is good.
All right, cool. There's another thing we could pass in here too called timestamps, which gives us out of the box created at and updated at. If we want those, it doesn't matter. You actually pass it as a second argument. So after line 7, yeah.
After the semicolon?
No. Inside of so colon, comma, and pass it so it's an object, so curly brackets, and then timestamps, all lowercase. True. Yeah, and so doing this says like.
Why semicolon?
Nope, you don't need a semicolon. Doing this adds a created at and updated at column to this,
Okay.
And it also like does the things of like, all right, I saved a new object, so I'm going to set the created at to now, updated at to now. I updated an object, I'm going to update the updated at value.
Oh, Prettier makes life so much better.
Prettier makes life way better.
Yeah.
Like if I'm working on something, like Prettier is the first thing.
Yeah.
Or if I work with new engineers or whatever, that's one of the first things. It cleans it up and makes it more readable and maintainable.
That's actually a really good thing to add to, when we talk about the ham stack.
Yeah.
And I think it might. Do you think that goes under abstractions or process? I feel like that's kind of like process, like tools you should use for process.
Yeah. To me,
Prettier.
tooling. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's an intern right now in engineering in Kansas City. She's going to school, finishing her comp sci. And one of the things I was telling her is that makes a big difference between like entry level, mid level, whatever, is getting comfortable with tooling.
Yeah.
Is being able to pick up a computer and somebody saying like, hey, here's the repo, and knowing that when I get a repo and I have access to it, I need to clone it, I have the Git CLI installed, I'm going to install VS Code or whatever, your editor of choice,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm going to do things like, okay, here's Prettier, here's how you, like, tooling is a big thing, because that helps out so much with like, if everybody's using these, like the tooling sets and we understand how these things are working, it takes out just like a huge layer of confusion.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know my tooling, therefore it helps me to know
And you
the
just
code
like
base as well.
install the, I don't know if they call it the Prettier config file.
It's a Prettier extension which installs it onto VS Code, and then you can format on. You can add it to onsave, and then.
But it's like teams in general. It's like
you
come onto a team. The first thing you do is you get the Prettier file.
Yeah.
So there's no arguments.
Exactly. Right. It takes it out of the developer's hands.
Yeah.
Because code styling is so subjective.
Yeah.
I've seen people who are very particular about certain things, and it just takes it out of your hands because it's no longer an argument, right?
Yeah.
No, everything's overwritable, but at this point, like, no, we're going to follow this Prettier standard.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So timestamp.
Okay. So now we have our schema, and we're good to go there. So now what we're going to do is create an interface. An interface, or I like to call my data transfer objects.
Is it in this file?
No, under users, I'd create another directory called interface.
Okay. New folder.
Yeah.
Interfaces. How come the CLI doesn't do it for you?
Because we're not technically creating something that the CLI knows about.
Okay, so new file. And I call it interfaces.schema.
No, I call it user.interface.ts.
Interface.ts. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So this is kind of another layer of Mongoose.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to define is an interface called user that extends document, which is an interface provided by Mongoose that adds a lot of functionality around it, right? So we have a schema We'll use that schema to build a model. We interact with the interface,
Okay.
right? It'll make a little more sense when we actually put it together. Okay. So let's import document from Mongoose. I'm really...
It's like as intense as me like learning Python or something.
You want to learn Python? We can do Python. We can do Graphql and Python. I can teach you Go if you want.
God, let's start with this. Okay. Okay, import what?
Document, capital D, from Mongoose.
Document from Mongoose. Okay.
Alright, so we're going to export interface.
Export interface.
User. Capital U.
So,
extends document.
Capital D.
Yep.
Document.
Yep.
Okay.
And so now document, so we got to give it properties. Curlies.
Like this?
Yep.
Wait, so sorry.
No, go ahead.
Interface. What am I exporting? I'm exporting interface. What is interface?
Yeah, interface is, so with what OOP, object-oriented programming, we have classes, which is an object blueprint. So a class contains properties that I know about a class. So if you have like a human class, then properties would be like name, birthday, height, weight, right? And then we have methods or things that we know that our class can do, which is like walk, talk, whatever, right? And so in TypeScript, they introduced types, interfaces, and classes. And if we transpile it, a class is a function transpile, right? So we have a function. So if we have a class user, we have a function user, and all of our methods on it would be function, prototypical inheritance, right? We'd have user dot, prototype dot, walk, talk, right? And then we can have properties and stuff. An interface doesn't, nor a type, actually, they don't compile or transpile JavaScript. It is a TypeScript convention.
Okay.
They do not exist. Like you open up an ES6 and create an interface. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
So an interface is actually really cool because it allows us to define properties and methods as well, but we can't provide like implementation, right? So we could say like an interface user has a property, email, and we could have a method called find by email, right? But we can't implement it in our interface.
Okay.
So an interface in OOP land is like a common thing that we know, so we can define these common things and then we can implement that interface. Okay. And if we have a class that implements an interface, we have to implement everything inside of the interface. It's a little bit different in TypeScript, but that's like OOP interfaces.
Okay.
So in here, like this is going to look almost exactly like our schema, but the difference is we're not going to define like Nest or Mongoose type. So we're going to have like first name of type string.
I think I did like that, right?
Yep.
And then just string.
Yep. Lowercase. Yep. Perfect. And then last name type string.
And then email.
Yep. And then email type string. And because we're extending document, we get ID and created that, updated that out of the box.
Okay.
That's it. That's all we need from this. This is what we actually interact with. So we won't really interact with our schema much. We'll like when we read, like when we do a find by ID from a schema, it will convert. It'll return a user interface type.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to create our user service, and so to me, and then you can use the CLI for this. So you could do a bit.
Dang it. Nest G service.
User.
Okay.
And Nest CLI is really dope too, because if you remember when we generated our config service initially, it added a tab module, but it didn't do that here because it already knows we have a service module. So it's going to add it to our user module. So it's going to add it to our user module as a provider.
Wait, say that again?
So earlier when we created our config service,
it
added the config service as a provider to app module because we didn't have a config module. We do have a user module. So when we did this generate of our service user, it added it as a provider
because
to our
I said
user
user
module
dash.
because it knows that we have a user module. So it does that for us.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now open this up.
No, we open up user service.
Oh, sorry. User service. Where are you at? Okay, there. Mm-hmm.
So first thing we're going to do is import our. We're going to import inject model from nest.js/mongoose.
I feel like I don't even need to worry about spaces or anything.
No. Yeah, write as garbage code as you want, and it'll fix it for you.
Yeah.
And we're also going to import model from Mongoose.
Model.
Yep.
Will it just give me a semicolon? Hey.
It will indeed.
That is nice. Okay.
And then we're going to import.
That's kind of bad though.
Yeah, I mean, it can make you lazy.
Yeah, okay, go
So you
ahead.
gotta be careful. And then we're gonna import our user interface. So we're gonna import user from /interfaces /user interface.
From /user.
That's interfaces.
Is it just is it dot slash?
Yeah, because you're here and you're trying to get to
interfaces /user.interface.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So this is where the fun begins. So what we're gonna do first. Okay. First off, in backend architecture, what I do package by feature. So a feature in this case is user, right?
Okay.
Whatever is around users is going to be inside of a mod or a directory called user, right?
Okay, yeah.
Or authentication or whatever. But personally, I follow inside of there I create layers, right? So we have like an interface layer, a schema layer, and then we have a service layer. To me, a service layer is the most robust. And our service layer, it should handle all business logic. Our controllers should be completely free of, our controllers, or in this case, our resolvers, should be free of business logic. Our repo layer should be free of business logic. Our service layer should do all business logic. So in our case, it's going to do a couple things. Once we introduce GraphQL, which is it's going to do any conversions from GraphQL types to user interface types, and any conversion from user interface types to GraphQL types when it returns it out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
basically services are doing all the work.
Services do all the work, and me, like, they catch my errors and throw very, like, useful exceptions of, like, this is a service error exception, like, I couldn't find this class, or this error occurred, or whatever. And they also do things like logging, right? I've seen a lot of times when people build out APIs, where they log at every level. So you have like a log at your controller level, like, hey, this controller was hit, and then at service level, and then at this level. And that becomes very verbose, and it's really hard to read through those kind of logs. So I prefer to always just log in my service layer. I'm not saying like everybody do that, that's just my personal opinion.
Okay.
So in here, the first thing, inside of our user service, we're going to have a constructor, and this is where we're going to add our user model. Yeah, you need it, but you're not going to have anything in it. So inside of our constructor, as a constructor parameter, we're going to pass in, we're going to have, this is where our model, our user schema model is going to be injected. So we're going to do @inject model.
Inject model.
Capital I. That's from that. Yep.
Okay.
Open parentheses. And this is where you give it a name. So this name that you're using here is active. Will become like the name of that that model. So and I follow like lowercase snake casing for database naming. So in this case, it's just user, right? So it's a string user.
Do I need to typescript anything in here? Or?
No. So now next, outside of it, we're going to say private.
Outside of here.
Yeah, still inside of our constructor params, but not inside of the inject model.
Okay.
Yeah, private, read-only. Nope, private, it's just saying it only has access to this class. So space read-only means it can't be reassigned. Now we're going to say space user model. Yeah, however, colon and then we're going to give it a type. Our type is model that we imported from Mongoose, so capital M. Yep. And that takes a generic, and so our type here is our interface, so user. So you pass in the generic, not generic, so it's angle brackets. Capital U user. This is our interface. So what this is saying is we have a model, user model, which is a Mongoose model of type user, which extends document, which is why we can do that.
And where is user? User is from here.
Right, that's our user that we define.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we're just going to do just a couple things. Let's do a find by ID.
Okay, so where do I do this?
So it'll be a method inside of our service. So just a couple new lines.
A method inside of my service after the constructor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So async, and let's just do find by ID.
Lowercase?
It's a method, so we're going to pass in ID as a parameter to our method find by ID. So ID of type string.
Like that?
Lowercase, all lowercase. Yeah. Okay, and this is going to return.
So do I return?
outside of that? Yeah. So this is a function. So we're saying we have an asynchronous function with name find by ID, which has a parameter of ID of type string, and it's going to return. So like give it a return type, so colon. Yeah. Promise. No, we're going to define our return type. Sorry. So promise, capital P.
Where's promise coming from?
Promise is like a Node.js, like a single wait. That's all promise based, right? So we're saying like, I promise that I'm going to return this value when it has been returned successfully.
Okay.
So promise is generic, so it takes a type. So our type here is user. Angle brackets. Yeah.
Capital.
Yep.
Okay.
Now we can give curly brackets.
Okay.
And so inside of here, we're going to say return this dot user model. Yep. Dot find by ID. Capital B is a snake case, or camel case. Right? Find capital B, capital I.
Didn't I just do find by ID somewhere else?
You defined a function of find by ID. This is saying like lowercase b. Find by ID, lowercase f. Sorry.
Oh my god.
Lowercase f, capital B, capital I.
Camel case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Camel case. Sorry. All right. And this is a function. It's open
Okay.
parentheses, and you pass in your ID.
Which ID?
The ID, the property that you have. Function, pass in the value. So yeah. So just ID.
Okay.
Yeah. And then dot exec or exec. No, not inside of there. On the function. It'd be way more helpful if we had any IntelliSense whatsoever. And that's a function as well. So
Okay.
yeah. And then semicolon after that. All right. So what we're doing here.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I don't know what's up with your IntelliSense. That's frustrating. So what we're saying, okay, so we have a user service, which is injectable. Inside of it, inside of our constructor, we're injecting our user model,
Okay.
which is a Mongoose model, which means we have a database connection to MongoDB using Mongoose. And we have a collection called user, and in this case it's called model, of type user, right? And then anytime we want to interact with that, anytime we want to find things, create things, whatever, it comes from this user model. So our user model is a repo, it's a repository, right? It allows us to do querying and insert and CRUD functionality on our user collection. So find by ID is one of those methods, right? We can find by ID is a method on user model.
Okay.
So it finds a single record of type user by the ID that we pass in. That's what we just did.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's go to our module, and then we'll add GraphQL.
That module?
No, user.module.
Okay.
So,
Import GraphQL?
Nope. We're going to import Mongoose module from Nest.js Mongoose.
Mongoose. And then do I add it as a provider?
So this will be an import.
Okay, so right
So-
here?
Yeah, I mean, I would put it above, but I don't think it matters. It probably doesn't matter. So yeah, imports, and it's an array. And if you remember when we were talking about app module, we had mongoose module.for root async. This is going to be mongoose module.for feature.
Here? Dot
Right,
feature?
because our feature in this case is,
How did we do that? Dot async or async?
yeah, you don't need async on this. So it's feature and it's a function, and inside of it, yeah, we're going to pass in an array. So open square brackets. Yep, perfect. And inside of that, you're going to pass an object.
Okay.
Yep. And inside of this, so mongoose module for feature allows us to say like, all right, we're in a feature. Our feature is user, and this feature represents a collection in our database.
Okay.
Right? So we need to import our user schema from our /schemas, capital U.
From my user schema?
Yeah, it's /schemas /user.schema. And yep, schema. Yep. All right.
Didn't even complain.
Because TypeScript, it hasn't picked up any IntelliSense or TypeScript so far. All right, so inside of our for feature here.
Do I need to like install a plugin? Like
I
a
don't-
VS Code plugin?
Maybe, can you click on your little settings icon? Scroll down. Yeah, open it up again and scroll down. And so, yeah. Check for updates. That's the problem. Huh.
What's that?
My guess would be that when you downloaded it, you didn't copy it over to your applications directory.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, that's also why your code dot doesn't work. So we can fix that.
You
Go to downloads,
Yes. Downloads. And
move
just
that
dump
into
it.
applications.
Oh my god! I swear to God, if this works, I'm gonna be very sad
Go to applications.
and happy.
Yeah, close this out. Command Q in that line. Right there. Just hit Command Q. Just quit. Now open up your applications folder.
Okay. There we go. Whoops.
By the way, watch this. Drag that folder down, or actually drag the applications down. You can drag it into your yeah. You can drag it into that. Yeah, right there.
Just toss it in the trash.
No, I hope you didn't toss it. So like on mine, I have mine set up here. So this is my applications, and I can open them from here.
Yeah. Why isn't it dragging?
That's weird.
Okay.
Anyway, so open up VS Code again. I don't see it.
I'm gonna be so happy.
Can you open it from applications? I just want to see that it's in there.
The applications, Visual Studio Code.
Is it in there? It's not in there.
Didn't I just drag it in?
Yeah, go to downloads.
Downloads.
Go back to your home. Click on applications. It's in there. Drag that from there into there. Yeah. There we go. Now go open it.
Now it's happening.
Now click on double click on that. Reopen. I don't know if this will make it happy, but it might. All right, do Command Shift P. And do, it's right there. Shell command, install code, command, and path.
Ah.
It's gone. Close it and just open it again. Hit escape. There it is. Now quit.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Whoa. I wonder if this is why you can't check for updates. I bet this is pretty far behind. Quit this. Oh. Don't open it from that. Let's try to open it from the terminal. So open up your terminal and that directory we were just in. Yeah, right there. Your code dot.
Yay! That is a bug that I would have never figured out. Ever. Okay.
And maybe this will pick it up now.
It's a little bit happier, it seems. App module. Yeah, no more complaints.
Can you command hover over something and see if it gives you IntelliSense?
And
There we go. Ah.
oh my god. Thank you.
All right, go back to our user module. It's now actually complaining for maybe a legitimate reason, which is because you're not passing in the right thing. So it is. Look at that. All right. Name.
Name.
Oh my god, look at that IntelliSense. All right, so now this name needs to match the name that we put into our user service, so user. Yep, and that's the name of the collection it is. When it saves a new user record, it'll be in a collection called user.
Okay.
All right, schema.
Wow, there's a lot of things I need to understand.
Colon, and this is our user schema.
User schema, like that.
So much better. All right, now save. And now you're good. Now we have it. All right, let's start our app and let's just check the world.
All right. So, wait. Control. And
Yarn start. If you do :dev, it runs it in.
What's the difference between yarn run start and yarn start in this case?
Nothing at all. It worked.
Okay, it worked.
So now we have a collection, and if we want to validate that, we could go to our terminal that had our Mongo open. I think it was
this one? Okay.
You show collections.
Show collections.
Yeah.
Oh.
There it is.
So now I have this. So I have a database.
Yep.
Somewhere on my computer.
Yeah, it's actually in a /data directory.
Okay.
It's like, it's not tilde, not like home /data,
Mm-hmm.
like root /data.
Okay, so, and it's just a random database. What is my database called?
GraphQL-server or GraphQL-database.
Oh, GraphQL-database.
Yeah.
Oh, it's exciting. Okay. But in order for anybody to use this, I need to have this GraphQL database like on the internet somewhere.
So, funny you mention that. There's two things. One is like people can install their own database locally. If you want them to use your database, yeah, you have to put it out somewhere for them to connect to it.
Yeah.
But that introduces a bunch of different stuff, which we can go over because it's really not terribly difficult with MongoDB Atlas. It's pretty easy. My friend and I were talking about this the other day, and in all of his repos, he creates a scripts folder that has all of the things that you need to install everything that it needs. So you can write script/bootstrap, and it would install like Node.js, npm, Nest.js CLI, and then obviously it would run like a Yarn and then you run a Yarn install on your project, right?
Right.
So if you brought this down and you had none of those things, you could run it still because it would do it all for you, right? Like, oh, you need this down the road, right? And then one of the things that his would do is like database, and it would install MongoDB onto your machine, and then configure it and create the database in the user, right?
Okay, so
It's
now
like a
where are we at?
scripts to
So
roll
are
the
we,
ball approach.
are we done? Because
We can now actually introduce GraphQL.
Okay. So do we have that as another video?
I think so. I think that would be another
So
video. And I think we check this in and then create a new branch.
This video sums up creating a schema.
Yeah,
and
this
a
sums
collection.
exactly. This sums up the creation and how we interact with a schema, like a MongoDB schema through Mongoose.
Okay, so now I'm going to use this. Oh wait, let me Control C.
Yeah.
And then I say git add Mongo.
I would
Mongoose.
I would say add user Mongoose schema functionality.
What else did I do on this one?
That was pretty much it. It's going to do that every time because you set a passphrase when you created your SSH key.
I know. I shouldn't have done that.
It's annoying, but it's definitely safer.
Yeah. Okay, so now I get my GraphQL server and let me just...
Yeah, so you're going to want to merge that in. And then we'll do the git fetch origin, git checkout master, git pull, those kind of things. I'm running to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah.